Thank you, Dr. Abir. Appreciate your testimony and your experience. I wanted to start a round of questions. I'll start with Ms. Lloyd. You're a journalist, and you have to get facts right, and you know the importance of accurate information, especially in the context of an emergency. I'm sure you're also sensitive to how, and you made reference to this in your testimony, about how disinformation or rumors or other misleading information can put families at risk, can put a whole community at risk. In the aftermath of the train derailment in Ohio, news organizations got facts wrong. You shared in your own testimony that you and your neighbors could only find information through local Facebook groups, and that these became rumor mills, to use your words, that cause unnecessary panic. Why is it important for families like yours that include people with disabilities and older adults to have access to accurate, trustworthy information about both emergencies and disasters as they're occurring and, of course, in their aftermath?
Yeah, I think not everybody has discernment. I think a lot of people who are new to technology, especially in our rural area, think because it's printed on a website that it's official and it's true. And in this case, it obviously was not necessarily the case. I know of people who live 20 miles out that were getting hotel rooms that probably the people who lived within the 1 mile radius of the explosion desperately needed. There seemed to be no information czar or no information manager who was managing the information coming out from our like town supervisors, our local state representatives. It just seemed to be a free-for-all.
Mm-hmm. Nothing that was centralized, huh?
Not that I could find.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the challenges in this area of policy to try to improve that. We'll talk more about that. I wanted to turn to Dr. Bennett Gale. In your testimony, you talked about the importance of a whole community approach to emergency preparedness. The Ready for Disasters Act will create a commission that will have on the commission people with disabilities, older adults, and experts to provide guidance on inclusion of those Americans on such a commission, so that they're prepared and we're prepared during disasters. These particular citizens of ours have specific needs before, during, and after disasters that are often ignored. Dr. Bennett Gale, what specific challenges do older adults and people with disabilities face after a disaster strikes, and why is it so important that they have a seat at the table throughout all phases of emergency preparedness?
Thank you for the question. I believe it's not just in response and recovery that they have their challenges. What happens during preparedness, and I think we should invest more money in preparedness, is that they're often left out of the exercises and simulations when we're thinking about and planning for people with disabilities. There needs to be some proper inclusion. So sometimes you may see someone without a disability being a mock actor trying to figure out what their needs might be, and that doesn't necessarily cause anyone to figure out what their actual needs are. They should be included in planning. In response during warnings and emergency messaging, there needs to be consideration for American Sign Language and prominent languages in the area. Reaching out to populations only gets us halfway there. Did they understand the message, and can they actually comply with that message is something that we really haven't looked at as much. We're starting to think about that, but we're doing a lot of research on making sure that we have clear, consistent, and accurate messaging going out and trying to reach the populations, but often just having numbers on how many people that receive the message doesn't actually get us to know if they are able to understand the message and if they're able to take the necessary precautions. In evacuation, we can figure out how to maintain their social connections and social networks. That's extremely important because if they are unable to, then they fare way worse than if they actually are able to keep up with their social connections. And then in search and rescue, we have problems with trying to figure out where people are located. These groups are not necessarily geographically located all together. So how do you figure out where they are? Registries have not worked in the past. Registries only pick up about 5% of our population in a particular area, and at best. And then when we do have registries, you have a number of people who don't want to be on them, especially those who are people with disabilities and some older adults, and we have to take that into consideration. With recovery, there's early evidence, especially even recently from Hurricane Harvey, of the paperwork being very detailed and being very difficult to navigate, and that also hinders people from filling out the paperwork or getting information so that they can recover. And it may not consider unique household dynamics. Some of the paperwork does not consider the fact that families living in a particular area have passed down their houses from person to person, and then you don't have a deed. Or it doesn't consider the fact that you may have grandparents, and a number of them are, taking care of young children, and how do they actually navigate that system. And then mitigation, it's costly at the individual level. A lot of our older adults are on fixed incomes, and it's not easily explained. That takes some time to do. We have evidence of it working where people have been able to mitigate and do it at the household level, but that has taken way more than 30 days. It's taken quite like a year or so. And a good example of that is in Greensburg, Kansas. After tornadoes, they did get a chance to get individuals to start thinking about green living or changing their household structures so that it would be better off. But that took a lot of community engagement and explaining to individuals what was happening so that they can buy into the system.
Doctor, thanks very much. I'll turn to Ranking Member Braun.